So today we're up in Talbot. Look at all the pine cones all ripped up by squirrels and whatnot. White pine here. Young pine forest in this section. But Talbot is a preserve next to some rivers. Beaver River. I think, or no, it's the Beaver Brook that flows into the Shetucket, I believe. And it's like a hemlock valley and whatnot. But anyways, I'm here. There's like 10 cars here. Might be a group, might not be. But we'll look at the plants that grow here and just do a little video, you know. Norway spruce. These were planted. So this forest is likely just like a little plantation, part of the old farm it used to be part of. Look at all the old cones. Wow. It's a lot of cones. They're all piled up here. And then we got fallen pine trees. So this is likely a planting. Probably 50 to 60 years old, mixed in with a few oaks. I was going to show you the sap. The sap on these trees you can use as fire starter. So if you ever get in a pinch, you can collect some of this and you can start a fire in whatever type of weather. As long as you got a lighter, and or if you want to grab some tinder like these little pine needles or some grasses, those will light, and this is the perfect stuff. This will start a fire lickety-split. Rubus hispidus, one of the most common rubuses. There's another rubus that looks similar, but that one usually grows more in full sun. The Rubus hispidus is also known as swamp dewberry, but I've seen it grow in pretty much any habitat that's even in full sun, so it's a really common plant. It's flush and red. This one's still green. Probably the same plant, long rhizomatous stems, or stolonish. I don't know. They grow and then they dip down, they root a little bit. They have white flowers and tasty little tiny blackberries. Leucobirum glaucum, or pincushion moss. And pincushion mosses you usually find more in piney or just in general uplands, and they always form like this kind of ball. Whereas white moss, Leucobirum albidium, I believe, that one kind of just forms like a mat that grows along trees or stumps or the ground. But this one always forms like a cushion, like a little ball. These are little sorry, I don't know, your spore stalks on there. It's a common dryland moss. And then right next to it we have some atrichum. Not polytrichum, atrichum. How you tell the difference between a polytrichum and an atrichum. Atrichums usually are short and stubby, and they don't have long stalks. Whereas polytrichum's much taller. Quercus alba here, or the white oak. It's a small tree right here with the kind of peely bark. It's a red oak here. This one might be a black oak, or it's just a northern red. Usually shade-grown leaves look like this. Invasive rubrum, or the red maple, mixed in with some oak. The red maples are probably these smaller trees here. Vernal pool. There's some polystichum, the Christmas fern. And there's even some Dryopteris. Actually, no, those aren't even... Okay, those are Dryopteris out in the middle there, underneath the water. Interesting. The ever-present and ever-common Calcladium imponens. Right here, the brocade moss, super-duper common. And right next to it, we got some dicranum. That's what, this kind of... The broom moss right there, that smaller one. I'll show you a bigger clump, because I'll definitely find one. There's your dicranum. I don't know exact species, I'm still learning this one. But it's a dicranum. Go wrong with Pyrola americana here. There's the American wintergreen. Super duper common. And we have a little Norway spruce here, so you just pluck them out, give them some space. Because eventually these will form big trees like those. And will completely shade the understory. And there's tons of them. Canadensis here, another super duper common plant. Little yellow flowers in the spring. Good pollinator plant, ground cover. Rose family. Lenus virginiana, or the witch hazel. These are young stems. They're more kind of like this brown color, and older stems almost take on this lightish color. You can see the fruliana too. That's all that moss in there. And you have a eulata right there as well. And you can see those little kind of balls, those nutlets, those little woody things. That's basically the fruit the capsule, and it has a yellow flower in the winter of all, or late fall. Beautiful though, one of my favorites, one of the more common shady shrubs. And right next to it we got a high bush blueberry, Vaccinium. I can't remember the genus name, but it's the high bush blueberry. You can tell because it's tall. There's also a variety of different species that all kind of look like this one, but kind of not. You know, blueberries, if it's tall, more or less, I'm like, all right, high bush. If it's short, low bush. That's kind of how it goes. I still need to learn all the different, the weird hijink ones. Like there's the black high bush blueberry, which has more blackberries than blueberries, which I have seen, but it's hard to ID them in the winter. Little moss garden over here. We got this is Thudium delicatum. That's Calcladium imponens. We got your dicranum, and we got more Thudium over here. So on this white oak stump, we got 3 or 4 different types of moss. I just love it when they do this. It's all up on the trunks. You can see a lot of the trunks in this lowland have the moss on them, like that one and that big white oak there. So this one is called Pseudomogedon attenuatus, or the tree skirt moss. I'm finally starting to remember its name. You know, I couldn't remember it to save my life, but this is one of my favorites. And they call it the tree skirt moss because it grows on the skirt of the tree, the trunk, the bottom of it. I've seen it grow all the way up, you know, if it's real humid and nice and still kind of sunny. Got the Norway spruce, get rid of that. Boom, beautiful. With Dendrolycopodium obscurum, or the flat branch tree club moss. They call it the flat branch because the branches are flat. That's a Dendrolycopodium, that's for sure. Also, we got little Chamaetes here, a little turkey tail fungi, amongst all the little dendros here and there. Cupersia lucidula, a shining fir moss. This one is relatively uncommon, but it can be locally abundant. It's a little lycopod related to the dendros. We got the sphagnum here too. Linderna benzoin, or the spice bush. Awesome host plant for the spice bush swallowtail. Arguably one of the prettier butterflies in this region. Can't wait to show you guys those in the summer. I love these. So these have tiny little yellow flowers in the spring, early spring, one of the first shrubs to bloom. And they get like 10 feet tall. And in the early spring, it's just like this yellow haze. And they like richer areas, so you know you have somewhere nice if you got the Linderna benzoin. Multiflora, hella invasive, grows in swamps like these. White flowers, and then the little red berries that the birds like. I have seen some insects starting to eat it. A couple of different scale insects and leaf hoppers, as well as aphids. So I think they're starting to naturalize, but I don't think they'll ever go away or be... I think they're going to be a dominant shrub either way, just like the barberry. You can see some right there. Which is a little disappointing because they're very pokey, but they are quite beautiful and they smell amazing as well. And they do provide something for bees and birds. Look at all the Persia. Very nice. And then I found this mystery one right here. It's not I think that's an epilobium. This little rosette here, but no way to tell without the flowers. iNaturalist will tell me. Simplocarplus pheotitis, your little skunk cabbage right there. So this is skunk cabbage swamp. They're here and there, everywhere. You can see them all poking up all throughout. They'll start blooming in about a month. Ranunculus recurvatus with a hooked buttercup, little basil rosette, Cardamine pennsylvanica, or the little swamp bitter cress. It's a little cardamine, a little mustard. They're cute, little white flowers. Muck swamp, or black mud swamp. These areas are incredibly diverse, but they're also incredibly sensitive to invasive plant takeover, which it is being taken over by the barberry and the multiflora rose, which shades out. They are somewhat beneficial because, you know, they protect from deer and rabbit over herbivory, you know, getting overeaten by those, but they're still kind of not great. I love black mud swamps like this. And you can see with the recent floodwaters, it's more or less washed most of the leaves and plant material away, leaving bare open soil for a variety of different plants like jewelweed and cardamine, you know, stuff that likes to open stuff. Skullcaps, etc. Pacra aria here. Very common, or not very common, somewhat uncommon, but in more richer muck swamps like these, they can be somewhat common. Little yellow dandelion-like flowers in the spring, and it's in the sunflower family. Monoclea sensibilis, or the sensitive fern. Very common in these black mud swamps, and when it spores out, these little guys are filled with spores, they can germinate on this open black mud. When hiking through these, like I've said before, you don't want to do it in the winter, especially if you're wearing muck boots. I don't recommend wearing muck boots through this because your boots will get stuck and your shoe will fly out, or your foot will fly out. You'll step in the mud. It'll be a bad time. So it's best to just wear tightly laced boots and just get swamped. You know, it's better than, you know, filling up these and now you're dragging this water muck thing around. So wear tightly laced boots so you don't lose your boot. Carpinus carolinea with a horn beam, all wide and sinewy and muscly. And this is a bigger one. I've seen like ones twice the size of this, but they become multi-stem. They're wonderful trees. One of my favorites. Look how awesome that bark looks. Some Pyrola elliptica. Different from the Pyrola americana because veins aren't as pronounced, and it's a lot smoother on the edges. And sometimes the leaves can be more ovate, but I've seen them be more circular. But they're a much lighter green than the typical Pyrola americana. It's Concephalum silbrosum, or the snakewort, a nice liverwort. One of the prettier ones. Kind of bleached by the sun right now. Let's see. Yeah, you can't really see it, but you know what it is. It's snakewort. Absolutely beautiful. We got a little skunk cabbage popping up right next to it. Got little violas. Got little galliums here. Varieties of grasses and sedges. You can see that skunk cabbage's neck has been popped out because of erosion from all the flooding. Varieties of fern, American tree moss right there. Climacium americana, more atrichum, another sedge. Maples, that's what these most of these leaves are. There's a few oaks. There's your multiflora rose. One of the main reasons why I like these areas so much is because they are by far the most diverse areas in New England forests. Like, the diversity is insane. Like, I mean, it's not as much as like the Amazon per se, but compared to the uplands, like, you're gonna be stopping every few feet looking at cool plants. Not to mention, you know, you could catch fish in the brook. I mean, there's so much great stuff going on. Even in the winter here. Tons of mosses, tons of forbs, ferns, shrubs, etc. Humongous shrub is likely Viburnum dentatum, or the arrowwood viburnum. You can tell because this kind of has opposite leaves, these long suckers that go straight up. Opposite buds, I guess. I'll confirm this on iNaturalist. Pelobium ciliatum. This is what's left of it, at least. It's the willow herb. Little plant in the geranium family, I believe. And these are all, I guess, the seed pods left over from little pink flowers. It's a little swamp plant. These are its basal rosettes. Then we have your rumex, your dock. Probably curly dock, or one of the other docks. I don't think they're native, but there might be a few native ones. Epilobium is an Onagraceae. My bad. Onagraceae, it just means it's distant relative to primroses, or the Onothras, which I see. You know, it's very similar. Onothras typically have a basal rosette, and then they shoot up a stalk with many flowers, such as this one. We have Rubus occidentalis, or the black raspberry. I also call it the blue stem raspberry because the stems appear more blue. I mean, this one looks more pink, but when it's growing and it's in like the open, like fields and whatnot, these are bright blue. And I don't really see these in swamps very often, so it likely came from the field that's right there. Rubus occidentalis. black raspberry, the blue stem raspberry, white flowers in the early summer, and delicious blackberries in the kind of like June or July. One of my favorites, and very bright silvery undersides of those leaves. GM canadense for the white avens with its basil rosette. Little white flowers in the summer. Here's what's remaining. It's in the rose family. I love their basil rosette. It's very pretty. This would be classified as a shrubby muck swamp because the soil is mucky and it's shrubby. It's open and it's swampy. You see all the standing water. There's sedges. They're very diverse. And with these types of areas, you could spend all day within 100 square foot area looking at everything because it's so jam-packed. Like, you could walk through here and you could see maybe a quarter of the plants that grow in this type of ecosystem. And so you could, like, it's hard because I've spent pretty much all day in an area the size of a football field just meandering around looking at everything. And it's so much fun, but it's also, like, exhausting because this habitat is notoriously difficult to walk through. Look how thick it is. Not to mention you're sinking in mud, but really rewarding when you find like rare orchids and whatnot. Interesting mold that grows on beaches, and they feed on the excrement from the beach blight aphid, which is this little white aphid that gets on these little American beaches by like the thousands, and they shit out all the honeydew, and then the mold eats the honeydew and forms these big black masses that hang from the trees. And you can also find it at the base with bigger ones. I have a basil rosette, or a plant, or the basil rosette of a plant in the genus Solidago. Here's its old yellow floret kind of stalk thing. And then what I was interesting about this particular basil rosette is this bright kind of purpley underside to those leaves, stressing from the cold. Or I think it's just an adaptation to maintain its basil rosette in cold temperatures. Got some nice red sphagnum. Beautiful. That red color. It's half associated with cold temperatures, half associated with the type of sphagnum moss it is. I find it, for them to be somewhat common, but I've seen entire bogs of just red sphagnum. I can't wait to show you guys some of those. Those areas are unbelievable. Look at that. I love these. Just imagine an entire open bog filled with this. Hemlock Grove. Tsuga canadensis. It still has its lowest growth. Doesn't have as high of a population of the woolly adelgid invasive scale insect as one's more in uplands, but you can see it still has little scale insects. I believe that's a native one. It's a cute little one. And then up here we have their field, which I need to go botanize in the summer. I'm sure there's spiranthes and whatnot up here. But another really diverse area to check out. And there's your grove, and then there's the wetland I was just sauntering through. Schizachyrium, or the little blue stem grass here in this meadow. It's also mixed with different species of Solidago. We got the Juniperus virginiana, assorted invasives like this honeysuckle coming up. I believe this is some kind of aronia or just a black cherry. Prunus arachina. Typical meadow. Bergeria, or a wild strawberry, growing next to this field with its fuzzy little stems. There's your field. It's a really native field. It's pretty nice. Here at Caria ovata, beautiful as ever with its nice shags. Invasive garlic mustard, Alaria petiola, shitty plant. Spirea alba, or the white spirea, or meadowsweet, white meadowsweet. Rose family, great shrub. I love these. Blooms in late summer and early summer. Rubus occidentalis with its very blue stems. Blue stem raspberry, I call it. Beautiful. I could see that being a hedge with its blue stems.